Welcome to LMPD Partners with You. I'm Lower Merion Commissioner Scott Zelov, and I'm chair of the Police Committee for the Board of Commissioners. With me today is Police Superintendent Michael McGrath. Mike, how are you?
Scott, great. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Today we're going to talk about our police department, and specifically we're going to talk about the services and patrol functions of the police department. And Mike, you and I will talk about various aspects of the patrol functions. Why don't we talk about the goals and responsibilities of the Uniform Patrol Division of the Police Department?
Well, the main goal of the Patrol Division is to ensure high quality of life in the community, crime prevention, address issues of concern in the communities. Our real focus as police department is to be problem solvers. We go out and just provide a wide variety of services to the community beyond just enforcing laws and local ordinances. We do everything from addressing traffic concerns to neighborhood disputes to business and commercial issues. Basically, when people in a community don't know where else to go, they call the police. And our patrol officers are the first ones to get there and try to resolve their problems.
Mike, is there one specific focus of our police patrol when they're doing their job and interacting with members of the public?
Well, the thing is to be interactive with the community and address the community's needs. It's a very big township. You know, we cover 24 square miles. Almost 60,000 residents reside here in the township. Much larger daytime population for business, shopping, that kind of thing. We have major highways going through the township, brings a lot of people from outside the township through the township. So there's a wide variety of services and needs that the community has. So whether it be Bryn Mawr or it be Ardmore or Bala Cynwyd, there's some different things required based on those different characteristics of the neighborhoods. And you know, we're there to address whatever people see as their specific needs.
So you talked about the size of the township, so let's talk about the size of police patrol. How many officers are assigned to patrolling in Lower Merion Township?
Well, obviously, in police work, we're 24/7, 365 days a year. So we have 4 patrol platoons. Typically, they're staffed with about 19 officers in each platoon to cover the full 24-hour clock, 7 days a week. And also 3 supervisors in each platoon. So you have about 21 officers or so on a given shift. Now, obviously, they're not all working every day. You have vacations, you have time off, you have training, all those other things. But that's what's allocated for each patrol platoon. On top of that, you would also see our Special Operations Unit. These are officers who are specially trained in highway enforcement, to do anti-crime type of patrols, could be plainclothes assignments, and our bicycle unit. All those officers, and even some officers within each of those platoons, are cross-trained in all those different facets as well.
Meaning that patrol units, many patrol officers can work when they're on patrol. They can do so in a vehicle or on a bike or on foot.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So we have a multi-layered approach to deployment of our resources. So basically, so that we have quick response to service calls, we lay out our patrol beats where they're assigned geographical areas where officers patrol and stay within those beats unless they're assisting officers on neighboring beats. And that is based on call volume. So it's evenly dispersed across the township. We want to make sure that whether you're in Ardmore or you're in Bala Cynwyd, if there's an emergency, the police will be able to get there quickly. Then on top of that, once we cover those basic beats, we have sector patrols. So that's the same officers in the platoons that might overlap several beats. That depends on what's going on a given day, even a given time of day. We can adjust those to address any different trends taking place. If we see an uptick in criminal activity, say burglaries, we will adjust those sector patrols to that. The same thing with the Special Operations Group. Their responsibility is, as I noted, we can address traffic with the highway enforcement team. We can use bicycle patrol if that's more appropriate to address a certain issue. Time of year also has something to do with that. Obviously, as spring and summer come around, we focus more on doing bicycle patrol. Clearly, we're not going to do a lot of that in January and February.
And bicycle patrol in the more dense areas of the township is more likely to be
Typically.
deployed as opposed to communities where there's residential properties are more spread out. So our
That's the
business
case.
districts and the surrounding neighborhoods of Ardmore and Bryn Mawr, for example, make much more sense for bike patrol and foot patrol.
They
Is that,
do,
is that how
as
deployment?
well as Pelican would, with the high density of the commercial areas and a lot of foot traffic. So we spread them around, move them around for that. Officers within each of the patrol platoon are also cross-trained on bicycle patrol. So at any given time, we could have 3 or 4 bikes out, or if we have a specific need, we could put out 8 officers on bicycles for that specific issue. It also gives us access to other areas, such as parks, and you take the Kenwood Trail, for instance. Clearly not easily accessible to patrol by vehicles,
Right.
or putting somebody walking on the Kenwood Trail, which is so large, isn't very helpful either. So we can use bicycles, and our motorcycles can get up there as well.
Mike, shifts are 12 hours.
They are.
Tell us a little bit about how a shift starts. An officer reports for duty. What's the first thing he or she does?
So there's 2 shifts a day, and those patrol platoons cycle into those shifts. They work 2 weeks of day work shifts, and then they rotate to 2 weeks of a night shift. Officers come to 15 minutes before the beginning of their shifts for roll call. That's where they're updated on the activity since the last shift they worked. They get updates on criminal activity, on people that might be wanted. That's done in a group setting. Of course, all that information is available to them directly in their vehicles, on their computer systems as well. But that's the opportunity to coordinate the efforts for that particular shift. Once the roll call is over, then they go out, relieve the officers from the prior shift. There's communication back and forth from, you're working my beat, you tell me what's been going on in the last day or two while I was off, and then the officers go out immediately to their beats.
And so, Mike, and then the shift is 12 hours. So what would typically occur at the end of a shift? After a 12-hour shift, the officer is concluding and then handing over the beat, as you say, to the next officer. What does the officer do at the end of his shift typically?
Well, the beginning and end of the shifts are somewhat similar. Obviously, they have to inspect their vehicles, make sure everything is okay with the vehicle. They need to be running. They need to be running and operating properly so that you can respond to emergency calls. They're checking their equipment. They're having what we just talked about. They're talking to the officers coming on or going off about what's occurring. They make sure all of the reports they took, investigations during that shift, are complete, and they've advised their supervisors of anything that's undone or still needs to be finished. And it can either be held because it's not critical to resolve it at that particular time, or it's handed off to someone else to follow up on.
And
There's
that
a lot
aspect,
taking place.
that aspect is very important because with a 12-hour shift, the officer at the end of that shift may not be back on duty for a few days.
That's very possible. So certainly there's a lot of handoff in that regard if it can't be completed within the time frame of one shift.
We have a population of almost 60,000, as you said, and the Lower Merion Police Department responds to every call. How many calls do we get on an annual basis?
In excess of 40,000 reportable incidents, and that's the ones that generate some type of documented report. There's much more activity and different types of things that officers do during the course of the shift that don't necessarily result in some kind of documented report. But just for service calls, it's easily over 40,000 each annually.
So, Mike, talk for a moment about the types of calls, the most typical types of calls an officer receives. And, what is the most common type of call that a police patrol officer would respond to?
Sure. In terms of volume, one of the highest is alarm calls. We have many both residential and commercial alarms spread throughout the township. So it's not uncommon for us to respond to 6,000 alarm calls a year. Now, the vast majority of alarm calls are false alarms. But we'd rather respond and check on whether it's a residence or a commercial property, make sure there's no problem there. It could be a perimeter alarm, just reporting a potential break-in, or it could be an internal alarm for somebody who is, it's a panic type alarm. And it may not be because some kind of criminal activity is occurring, but it could be a medical related issue. So responding to alarms is critical, and we do it very quickly, safely, but it's a large volume of the types of calls we get.
And it does point out the importance of residents and property owners to maintain their alarm system, because we deploy and respond to every alarm, and if many are false, that's a distraction for our police force.
It is. It takes you away from the other functions during the day, patrolling neighborhoods, responding to other concerns and addressing those. So if we are allocating our resources to false alarms, that does take away from the other services we can provide.
Mike, a resident needs to call the police. What should they do?
If you need a police officer to respond to an incident, we ask that you dial 911. Many years ago, the radio dispatch services were consolidated, and this is a statewide program, but they were consolidated here for our residents with Montgomery County's dispatch center. So to get a police dispatch to a location anywhere in Montgomery County, you dial 911. Our residents who have been here for a while, and particularly those, that used to the old landlines and our old emergency number, can dial, and if it's already in their phone system, 610-642-4200. That's our old 10-digit phone line for emergencies. You're going to be immediately routed to Montgomery County. It's answered slightly different than the 911 calls. We've had this discussion before. When you dial 911, the response from the call center is 911, what is your emergency?
Right.
This can be a little off-putting for some people, I think.
And particularly if the call is important but not an emergency call.
Not an emergency. Say you heard what you thought might be a crash down the block, or you think there's an abandoned vehicle or something else. It's minor, but you don't see it as an emergency. Some people are hesitant to pick up the phone and dial 911. If you call the 4200 line we just mentioned, there'll be a slightly different call taker response. They'll identify themselves as Montgomery County and ask what the issue is that you're calling about. There's also another number that's important that our residents should know about. That is 610-649-1000. So if it's not for immediate response of a police officer to investigate something, you need to follow up on a traffic concern. You want to speak to somebody in our community relations office. You want to speak to somebody in command. You need to speak to detectives about a follow-up to an incident. Dial 610-649-1000. And that would be able to internally send you to the right person within the police department.
Mike, we've had a great discussion today on police patrol in our township, a big township, and a large patrol contingent, and the kinds of services that they provide. We have a lot more to talk about, and we'll have another series of shows. I'm Commissioner Scott Zelov, Chair of the Police Committee, and I've been talking with Police Superintendent Michael McGrath. This is LMPD Partners with You. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to LMPD Partners with You. In this portion of our program, we will be continuing our discussion of the patrol function of the police department. Joining us at this time is the Operations Division Commander, Frank Thomas. Frank, welcome.
Thanks, sir.
Previously, we discussed the types of calls police officers typically respond to. We know that a large volume of our calls are for alarm activations. Another frequent call is traffic collisions. Can you explain to our audience the main focus of our response to these type of incidents?
Sure. The officer's primary responsibility is to arrive safely. We can't assist if we don't get there safely. As the officers arrive, they'll quickly assess the scene and park their vehicle in an appropriate location, maybe blocking a lane or blocking the entire intersection to prevent a secondary crash. After that's established, the primary responsibility is to care for any injured, either giving first aid at the scene or calling for additional medical assistance like Narberth ambulance. Once the scene is stabilized, the investigation begins. We determine the cause of the crash. We'll clear the highway when it's appropriate, and we'll assist motorists with any other needs they have if their car is disabled to get them home or any other location.
It seems like this would be fairly time-consuming. What's involved with completing a crash investigation, and how frequently do they occur in the township?
Lower Township, we average about 2,000 crashes per year. Each crash is thoroughly investigated to determine what the cause is. We also use the crashes to determine if there's any type of engineering issue that needs to be corrected. And it's also for the insurance company, so whoever's at fault for the accident is held accountable for their actions.
So it's a service to the individuals involved in that particular incident
Yes.
as well.
And each crash is time consuming. It takes approximately 45 minutes to an hour to complete the investigation.
When the officers are completing a crash investigation or any other type of field investigation in the township, can you explain what the process is and how that gets back through to the police department and through our system?
Sure. With advances in technology, each car now has a laptop, which is connected to a cellular modem. So the officer completes the report in the car and is able to transmit the report back to the police station, where it's reviewed by a supervisor.
When our officers are not out conducting investigations or doing traffic enforcement, what other type of duties are they involved in?
Well, the primary responsibility of all of our police officers is to maintain a safe and crime-free environment for our residents. This is accomplished by driving marked police cars. Our number one objective is to prevent crime, and that's accomplished through routine patrol.
And what other types of duties during the course of, we do 12-hour shifts, so it's a long portion of the day. What other kind of activities do they get involved in?
Something you don't typically associate with police officers driving around. They're also constantly looking for road hazards such as potholes, street lights out, and submitting repair slips through the Public Works Department to have these issues fixed.
And during the course of the day, our officers have a lot of interaction with our community. They're not just out there riding around in the cars looking for things or waiting for the radio to send them on a call. What other types of activities do our officers get involved in?
Our officers routinely get out of the car. It's called a supplemental foot patrol. They'll walk in business districts, basically an opportunity to get to know the residents and also the business owners throughout the town.
And of course, we cover 24 square miles. We have business districts. We have residential areas, many schools, private and public, and parks. Our officers are responsible for all those areas as well?
Yes, we deploy officers in different ways. Bike officers have access to, say, the Kinwood Trail to provide a presence there. And also it's an opportunity to interact with the public in these areas. We also have officers that go into the schools when we're invited into the schools to meet and greet with the students there.
Besides our patrol officers assigned to the various platoons and covering the entire township, we have other units within the operations division. We have a special operations unit. Can you explain to our audience what they do?
Sure. The Special Operations Unit is comprised of 3 separate units: the Bicycle Patrol Unit, the Highway Enforcement Team, and the Special Investigations Unit. The Bicycle Unit is very visible. We use them in the parks and the business districts and also special events. The Highway Enforcement Team is a group of officers who go out and enforce traffic laws, mainly based on complaints and accident histories to reduce accidents. Then we also have the Special Investigations Unit, which is a plainclothes unit that we use to address crime. The unique thing about this unit is all these officers are cross-trained. So if we have a large event like the Villanova National Championship, we can put numerous officers out on bicycles. If we have a burglary problem, we can take several officers, and put them in plainclothes details for crime details.
Now, actually, it was you and I several years back that put together this concept of the Special Operations Unit. One of the focuses we had when we were looking at that was that we have our fixed schedule for patrol platoons, and obviously we have to cover the 24-hour a day, 7 days a week coverage that we need. This unit is very flexible. As you just talked about, they have the cross-training. So not only do they have the different talents and skills that you just talked about, but we're able to flex their hours and also supplement patrol with them, aren't we?
Correct, and that was one of the main purposes of the unit. Patrol is tasked with the basic responsibility of handling police services for the community. When we have larger events, parades, it's taxing patrol. So these units, the Special Operations Unit, their hours are flexed, and depending on the type of event, whether they're going to be in bicycle patrol uniform or they're going to be in plain clothes, to address the special events.
And as we see different trends in criminal activity, we utilize them as well to address those things very quickly to cover whether it's a small portion of township or township-wide.
Yes, the flexibility is the key with this unit. If a crime pattern develops, we're able to flex their shifts very quickly, and within a day, even within the same shift sometimes, rotate their responsibilities to different areas.
Now, you're in charge of the operations division. It's a rather large portion of the police department. How many personnel are assigned to the operations division?
It's approximately 120 uniformed police officers, which also includes detectives.
So we just mentioned the investigations unit. Can you explain what their function is and their duties in the police department?
Sure. The initial crime reports are taken by Patrol Division, and their responsibilities, we already talked about, is to be visible and on the street. They don't have the time to conduct in-depth follow-ups, investigations into crimes such as burglaries and thefts. So the investigations unit takes their initial reports from Patrol and conducts an investigation, further investigation into the crimes.
Now, we handle approximately 1,000 what's called Part 1 crimes a year in the township, and many other investigative incidents are sent our way. Are all of them followed up by the investigations unit?
Yes, all Part 1 crimes are investigated by the detective unit.
Now, not all of them obviously lead to a conclusion where we identify the person responsible for the crime. What happens with those if there's just no evidence or there's no witnesses and there really is no ability to follow up? Is there follow-up with the resident who was impacted by the activity?
Yes, all victims of crimes of that nature, of a Part 1 nature, are contacted by the investigations unit to follow up to see if there's anything additional. And they were also provided a letter outlining who was assigned the investigation and what the outcome was.
So just to be clear, a lot of people kind of use some police jargon, Part 1 crime. So we're basically talking about burglaries, thefts, assaults, crimes of a higher nature.
Yes, crimes against people and higher end theft and burglaries.
Or property. So after investigation's completed, the next interaction is with the district attorney's office and bringing forward the cases to court. What is that relationship like between Lowell Police and Montgomery County courts and district attorney's office? We
have a very good relationship with the county prosecutors. Our detectives complete the criminal complaints, and they're sent up there, and an assistant district attorney is assigned. And we work in conjunction with them to bring the case in front of the court.
And this is also time consuming. These can actually go out 6 to 12 months after the initial incident.
Correct, and that's another reason why Patrol does not follow it up and it's assigned to an investigator.
So there's some continuity, and we're able to bring a successful conclusion to these investigations.
Correct.
Well, that is about all the time we have right now. I'd like to thank Frank for providing this look into the typical day of a Lower Merion police officer on patrol, and we look forward to providing you, our audience, with additional programming about our police department.